Welcome to the presentation of the booking rules. In this video, we will explain the different rule types and values that you can select. And we'll also show you how to configure reasons of visit with one or more booking rules. Let's assume that it is important for the practitioner John Doe to distinguish between new and existing patients for a specific reason of visit. Example, in the settings, he will open the menu for visit reasons and activate the patient status rule type, which will allow him to define rules for the patient type. He can now choose the desired reason of visit and assign rules to it by clicking on the grinding gears icon. In this submenu, he clicks on the button Add Rule, then he selects from the drop-down menu the desired combination. In this case, he wants to define a rule for new patients. In this menu he can define the maximum lead time, the minimum lead time, the duration, if it's bookable by referrals and if the reason of visit is online. Let's go through all those options individually, and explain them in detail. Maximum lead time defines the period from when an availability becomes visible to others. One can define it in days, hours, or minutes, meaning that if one defines 60 days the availabilities are bookable in this time frame before the current day. Here an example of a rule defined for new patients, and one for existing patients. As a practitioner, I wanted to give a certain priority to my existing patients. I define a rule for existing patients, with a maximum lead time of 5 days. And I also define a rule for new patients, with a maximum lead time of 10 days. This means that existing patients will see availabilities 5 days earlier than new patients. Minimum lead time. This setting defines the period from when the availability is no longer visible to others. Please note that in order to set a minimum lead time, you must already have defined a maximum lead time. Again, let's do a short example to illustrate that. Since as a practitioner I want to give a certain priority to existing patients, I define in my rules that the minimum lead time, for existing patients, is 1 hour, and for new patients is 1 day. This leads to the fact that an existing patient can see the availability up to 1 hour before it's due, and for a new patient it's already not visible 24 hours before it's due. The setting, duration, defines the length of an appointment. I can define different durations depending on the type of patient. Let's illustrate that in an example. Since for new patients I need to take 10 minutes more to get to know their medical history, I define that the duration for a new patient is 30 minutes and for an existing patient 20 minutes. The checkbox Referrals defines if this reason of visit is available to referrals. If you want more information about this feature, The checkbox Online defines if this rule will be visible on the patient portal or only internally to you and your staff. Now let's assume I also want to define rules that allow me to differentiate between publicly insured patients and privately insured patients. I activate the insurance type in the booking rules. This allows me to define rules based on the same criteria as explained in the video for the patient rule types. It's important to notice that one can combine both rules, meaning that I can define that a reason of visit has both a rule for the patient type and for the insurance type. Please note also that when the patient selects a combination, for which you have not defined a specific rule, the standard will be applied. All these rules and settings are not only applied in the patient portal, but they are of course also available to you and your staff, when you book appointments in your Doctena Pro agenda. In your agenda, as on the patient portal, it will calculate the duration depending on the rules you have defined. During your onboarding process, our dedicated team will in detail show you how you can define these rules, that surely will allow you to facilitate the triage in your practice. Thank you for listening.